I have done 30 plus certifications and am here to guide you throughout your certification journey. In this video, we will be covering some important questions of the Microsoft AZ-900 exam. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. To the important questions, question 1. Your company has data centers in Los Angeles and New York. Company has a Microsoft Azure subscription. You are configuring the two data centers as geo-clustered sites for site resiliency. You need to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option. You have the following data storage requirements. Data must be stored on multiple nodes. Data must be stored on nodes in separate geographic locations. Data can be read from the secondary location as well as from the primary location. Which of the following Azure stored redundancy options should you recommend? Here in this question, we need to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option based on the given requirements. As such, we should recommend read-only geo-redundant storage. Thus, the correct option is B. RAGRS allows you to have higher read availability for your storage account by providing read-only access to the data replicated to the secondary location. Once you enable this feature, the secondary location may be used to achieve higher availability in the events the data is not available in the primary region. This is an opt-in feature which requires the storage account to be geo-replicated. Question 2. Your developers have created 10 web applications that must be hosted on Azure. You need to determine which Azure web tier plan to host the web apps. The web tier plan must meet the following requirements. The web apps will use custom domains. The web apps each require 10 GB of storage. The web apps must each run in dedicated compute instances. Load balancing between instances must be included. Costs must be minimized. Which web tier plan should you use? Here in this question, we need to determine the Azure web tier plan to host our web apps while meeting the given requirements. As such, the web tier plan that we should choose is standard. Thus, the correct option is A. Here you can see plans that meet the given requirements, and based on all this, the correct option is standard. Question 3. Your company has virtual machines hosted in Microsoft Azure. The VMs are located in a single Azure virtual network named VNet1. The company has users that work remotely. The remote workers require access to the VMs on VNet1. You need to provide access for the remote workers. What should you do? Here in this question, the virtual machines are located in a single Azure virtual network named VNet1, and we need to provide remote workers access to the virtual machines on VNet1. As such, we should configure point to site VPN. Thus, the correct option is C. Point to site VPN gateway connection lets you create a secure connection to your virtual network from an individual client computer. Question 4. You have an on premises network that contains several servers. You plan to migrate all the servers to Azure. You need to recommend a solution to ensure that some of the servers are available. A single Azure data center goes offline for an extended period. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, our main requirement is to ensure that some of the servers are available if a single Azure data center goes offline for an extended period. As such, we will include fault tolerance in the recommendation. Thus, the correct option is A. Fault tolerance is the ability of a system to continue to function in the event of a failure of some of its components. In this question, you could have servers that are replicated across data centers. Availability zones expand the level of control you have to maintain the availability of the applications and data on your virtual machines. Availability zones are unique physical locations within an Azure region. Each zone is made up of one or more data centers equipped with independent power, cooling, and networking. To ensure resiliency, there are a minimum of three separate zones in all enabled regions. The physical separation of availability zones within a region protects applications and data from data center failures. With availability zones, Azure offers industry best 99.99% VM uptime SLA. By architecting your solutions to use replicated virtual machines in zones, you can protect your applications and data from the loss of a data center. If one zone is compromised, then replicated apps and data are instantly available in another zone. Question 5. What are two characteristics of the public cloud? The two characteristics of the public cloud are metered pricing and self-service management. Thus, the correct options are D and E. With the public cloud, you get pay as you go pricing. You only pay for what you use, no capex costs. With the public cloud, you have self service management. You are responsible for the deployment and configuration of the cloud resources, such as virtual machines or websites. The underlying hardware that hosts the cloud resources is managed by the cloud provider. Question 6. A company hosts an accounting application named App 1 that is used by all the customers of the company. App 1 has low usage during the first 3 weeks of each month and high usage during the last week of each month, which benefit of Azure Cloud Services support cost management for this type of usage pattern. Here in this question, App 1 has low usage during the first 3 weeks of each month and very high usage during the last week of each month. The benefit of Azure Cloud Services that support cost management for this type of usage pattern is elasticity. Thus, the correct option is C. Elasticity, in this case, is the ability to provide additional compute resources when needed and reduce the compute resources when not needed to reduce costs. Autoscaling is an example of elasticity. Question 7. You plan to migrate a web application to Azure. The web application is accessed by external users. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution to minimize the amount of administrative effort used to manage the web application. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to minimize the amount of administrative effort used to manage the web application. As such, we should include platform as a service in the recommendation. Thus, the correct option is B. Keywords are migrate and administration. Azure App Service is a platform as a service offering that lets you create web and mobile apps for any platform or device and connect to data anywhere in the cloud or on premises. App Service includes the web and mobile capabilities that were previously delivered separately as Azure Websites and Azure Mobile. Question 8. You have an on premises network that contains 100 servers. You need to recommend a solution that provides additional resources to your users. The solution must minimize capital and operational expenditure. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a solution that provides additional resources to your users while minimizing capital and operational expenditure costs. As such, we should include a hybrid cloud in the recommendation. Thus, the correct option is D. Hybrid cloud is a combination of private cloud and a public cloud. Capital expenditure is the spending of money upfront for infrastructure such as new servers. With a hybrid cloud, you can continue to use the on premises servers while adding new servers in the public cloud. Adding new servers in Azure minimizes the capital expenditure costs as you are not paying for new servers as you would if you deployed new servers on premises. Question 9. You plan to migrate several servers from on premises network to Azure. What is an advantage of using a public cloud service for the servers over an on premises network? An advantage of using a public cloud service for the servers over an on premises network is that the public cloud is a shared entity whereby multiple corporations each use a portion of the resources in the cloud. Thus, the correct option is D. The public cloud is a shared entity whereby multiple corporations each use a portion of the resources in the cloud. The hardware resources are managed by the cloud provider. Multiple companies create resources such as virtual machines and virtual networks on the hardware resources. Question 10. In which type of cloud model are all the hardware resources owned by a third party and shared between multiple tenants? The type of cloud model where all the hardware resources are owned by a third party and shared between multiple tenants is public cloud. Thus, the correct option is C. Private cloud is taken care of by the internal organizations to which it belongs. Public cloud is entirely taken care of by a third party such as Azure, AWS, or GCP. Hybrid cloud is a combination of on premises as well as public cloud. Question 11. You have 1000 virtual machines hosted on the Hyper-V hosts in a data center. You plan to migrate all the virtual machines to an Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. You need to identify which expenditure model to use for the planned Azure solution. Which expenditure model should you identify? Here in this question, we are planning to migrate all the virtual machines to the Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. As such, the expenditure model that we should identify is operational. Thus, the correct option is A. One of the major changes that you will face when you move from on-premises cloud to the public cloud is the switch from capital expenditure to operating expenditure. The switch also requires more careful management of your costs. The benefit of the cloud is that you can fundamentally and positively affect the cost of a service you use by merely shutting down or resizing it when it is not needed. The expenditure models are either CapEx or OpEx. CapEx is what you pay upfront on premises for servers, racks, cooling, security, the data center itself. OpEx is what you pay to keep your infrastructure operational, like IT staff. In this case, when you move to the cloud, What you identify in this case is the OPEX or operational model. This is because you actually don't have CapEx on the cloud, as you pay for the resources you use and not for the underlying hardware, security, cooling, etc. that you will pay for in the on-premise solution. That is why the right answer is operational. Elastic and scalable are not expenditure models. Question 12. You plan to provision infrastructure as a service resource in Azure. Which resource is an example of IaaS? Here in this question, an Azure virtual machine is an example of infrastructure as a service. Thus, the correct option is B. An Azure virtual machine is an example of infrastructure as a service. Azure Web App, Azure Logic App, and Azure SQL Database are all examples of platform as a service. Question 13. To which cloud models can you deploy physical servers? We can deploy physical servers to private cloud and hybrid cloud only. Thus, the correct option is A. A private cloud is on premises, so you can deploy physical servers. A hybrid cloud is a mix of on premises and public cloud resources. You can deploy physical servers on premises. Question 14. You have 50 virtual machines hosted on premises and 50 virtual machines hosted in Azure. The on premises virtual machines and the Azure virtual machines connect to each other. Which type of cloud model is this? Here in this question, we have 50 virtual machines hosted on premises and 50 virtual machines hosted on Azure that are, this is the hybrid cloud model. Thus, the correct option is A. Question 15. Your company plans to deploy several custom applications to Azure. The applications will provide invoicing servers to the customers of the company. Each application will have several prerequisite applications and services installed. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution for all the applications. What should you recommend? Here in this question, the applications will provide invoicing services to the customers of the company, and each application will have several prerequisites applications and services installed. As such, the cloud deployment solution that we should recommend for all the applications is infrastructure as a service. Thus, the correct option is C. Infrastructure as a service is an instant computing infrastructure provisioned and managed over the internet. IaaS service provider manages the infrastructure while you purchase, install, configure, and manage your own software. Question 16. Your company plans to migrate all its data and resources to Azure. The company's migration plan states that only platform as a service solutions must be used in Azure. You need to deploy an Azure environment that meets the company's migration plan. What should you create? Here in this question, the company's migration plan states that only platform as a service solution must be used in Azure, and we need to deploy an environment that meets the company's migration plan. As such, we can create an Azure App Service and Azure SQL databases. Thus, the correct option is C. Azure App Service and Azure SQL databases are examples of Azure Platform as a Service solutions. Therefore, this solution does meet the goal. Question 17. What does a customer provide in a software as a service model? In a software as a service model, the customer provides the application data. Thus, the correct option is A. Software as a service provides a complete software solution which you purchase on a pay as you go basis from a cloud service provider. You rent the use of an app for your organization and your resources connect to it over the internet, usually with a web browser. All of the underlying infrastructure, middleware, app software, and app data are located in the service provider's data center. The service provider manages the hardware and software, and with the appropriate service agreement, will ensure the availability and the security of the app and your data as well. Question 18. What is the first stage in the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure? The first stage in the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure is define your strategy. Thus, the correct option is D. Question 19. You have an accounting application named App 1 that uses a legacy database. You plan to move App 1 to the cloud. Which service model should you use? Here in this question, we have an accounting application named App 1 that uses a legacy database. We are planning to move App 1 to the cloud. The service model that we should use is infrastructure as a service. Thus, the correct option is B. Infrastructure as a service, as you need to install the legacy software. Cloud infrastructure based applications, it moves your existing on premises app to the infrastructure as a service platform or rehosts them. Lift and shift is a common term for this type of relocation. The programs will be nearly identical to what they were before, but they will now be able to run on cloud virtual machines. Question 20. Which term represents the ability to increase the computing capacity of a virtual machine by adding memory or CPUs? The term that represents the given description is vertical scaling. Thus, the correct option is B. Vertical scaling, also known as scale up and scale down, means increasing or decreasing virtual machine sizes in response to a workload. Compare this behavior with horizontal scaling, also referred to as scale out and scale in, where the number of virtual machine is altered depending on the workload. Question 21. What are two benefits of cloud computing? The two benefits of cloud computing are that it enables the rapid provisioning of resources and shifts capital expenditures to operating expenditures. Thus, the correct options are A and D. Azure allows you to build, deploy, and manage apps more quickly and easily without having to buy and slash or maintain the underlying infrastructure. Azure provides flexibility between CapEx and OpEx. Capital expenditures generate benefits over a long period. These expenditures are generally non-recurring and result in the acquisition of permanent assets. Building an application could qualify as a capital expenditure. Example, Azure reserved instances help Azure's most active customers save on long-term virtual machine usage, reserving virtual machines in advance at a discounted price by committing to a 1 or 3 year benefits. Operating expenditures are ongoing costs of doing business. Consuming cloud services in a pay as you go model should qualify as an operating expenditure. Example, you pay for a service or product as you use it, that is, pay as you go pricing. Question 22. What is a feature of an Azure virtual network? Isolation and segmentation is a feature of an Azure virtual network. Thus, the correct option is D. Question 23. Which cloud computing benefit provides continuous user access to a cloud based application with minimal downtime? High availability is the cloud computing benefit that provides continuous user access to a cloud based application with minimal downtime. Thus, the correct option is D. High availability is the only answer that has to do with keeping the applications available to the users. Question 24. You need to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure services. What should you identify? Here in this question, we need to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure services. As such, we should identify an Azure data center failure. Thus, the correct option is D. Availability zones expand the level of control you have to maintain the availability of the applications and data on your virtual machines. An availability zone is a physically separate zone within an Azure region. There are three availability zones per supported Azure region. Each availability zone has a distinct power source, network, and cooling. By architecting your solutions to use replicated virtual machines in zones, you can protect your apps and data from the loss of a data center. If one zone is compromised, then replicated apps and data are instantly available in another zone. Question 25. Your company plans to migrate to Azure. The company has several departments. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. What are two possible techniques to segment Azure for the departments? Here in this question, the two possible techniques to segment Azure for the several departments is multiple subscriptions and multiple resource groups. Thus, the correct options are A and D. An Azure subscription is a container for Azure resources. It is also a boundary for permissions to resources and for billing. You are charged monthly for all resources in a subscription. Single Azure tenant can contain multiple Azure subscriptions. A resource group is a container that holds related resources for an Azure solution. The resource group can include all the resources for the solution or only those resources that you want to manage as a group. To enable each department administrator to manage the Azure resources used by that department, You will need to create a separate subscriptions per department. You can then assign each department administrator as an administrator for the subscription to enable them to manage all resources in that subscription. Version 26. You have an Azure environment that contains multiple Azure virtual machines. You plan to implement a solution that enables the client computers on your on-premises network to communicate to the Azure virtual machines. You need to recommend which Azure resources must be created for the planned solution. Which two Azure resources should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we plan to implement a solution that enables the client computers on our on-premises network to communicate to the Azure virtual machines. We need to recommend which Azure resources must be created for the planned solution. As such, the two Azure resources that we should include in the recommendation are a virtual network gateway and a gateway subnet. Thus, the correct options are A and E. If you already have Azure virtual machines, this implies you have a VNet already. Thus, the answer should be Gateway Subnet and VNet Gateway. To implement a solution that enables the client computers on your on-premises network to communicate to the Azure virtual machines, you need to configure a VPN to connect the on-premises network to the Azure virtual network. The Azure VPN device is known as a virtual network gateway. The virtual network gateway needs to be located in a dedicated subnet in the Azure virtual network. This dedicated subnet is known as a gateway subnet and must be named gateway subnet. Question 27. You attempt to create several managed Microsoft SQL Server instances and Azure environment and receive a message that you must increase your Azure subscription limits. What should you do to increase the limits? Here in this question, in order to increase the limits, we should create a new support request. Thus, the correct option is D. Many Azure resources have quote limits. The purpose of the quota limits is to help you control your Azure costs. However, it is common to require an increase to the default quota. You can request a quota limit increase by opening a support request. In the support request, select Service and Subscription Limits. For the issue type, select your subscription and the service you want to increase the quota for. For this question, you would select SQL Database Managed Instance as the quota type. Question 28. Your company plans to move several servers to Azure. The company's compliance policy states that a server named FinServer must be on a separate network segment. You are evaluating which Azure services can be used to meet the compliance policy requirements. Which Azure solution should you recommend? Here in this question, the company's compliance policy states that a server named FinServer must be on a separate network segment. As such, the Azure solution that we should recommend to meet this requirement is a virtual network for FinServer and another virtual network for all the other servers. Thus, the correct option is B. Networks in Azure are known as virtual networks. A virtual network can have multiple IP address spaces and multiple subnets. Azure automatically routes traffic between different subnets within a virtual network. The question states that FinServer must be on a separate network segment. The only way to separate FinServer from the other servers in networking terms is to place the server in a different virtual network to the other servers. Question 29. Your company plans to start using Azure and will migrate all its network resources to Azure. You need to start the planning process by exploring Azure. What should you create first? Here in this question, if a company is planning to start using Azure and will migrate all its network resources to Azure, we need to start the planning process by exploring Azure. As such, we should first create a subscription. Thus, the correct option is A. The first thing you create in Azure is a subscription. You can think of an Azure subscription as an Azure account. You get billed per subscription. A subscription is an agreement with Microsoft to use one or more Microsoft cloud platforms or services, for which charges occur based on either a per user license fee or on cloud based resource consumption. You can also use a trial subscription, but the subscription expires after a specific amount of time or consumption charges. You can convert a trial subscription to a paid subscription. Organizations can have multiple subscriptions for Microsoft's cloud offerings. Question 30. Which Azure services should you use to collect events from multiple resources into a centralized repository? Azure Event Hubs is the service that we should use to collect events from multiple resources into a centralized repository. Thus, the correct option is A. These were all the questions for this video. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. We will be publishing more parts to this series in the future, so please make sure to subscribe our channel and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.